The 8 habits you need to achieve success. Ever wonder why some people seem to attract wealth while others struggle their entire lives? Why does money flow easily into some hands while for others it slips through their fingers, no matter how hard they work? Here's what's shocking. It's not about how much you earn, how smart you are, or even how lucky you get. The truth is, wealth is built on habits. Simple, consistent, smart habits practiced daily. There's a pattern to success, and just like there's a pattern to poverty, there's a pattern to prosperity. Those who rise financially don't do it by accident. They do it by intention through deliberate choices repeated over time. Jim Rohn said it best. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Not complex strategies, not secret formulas, just a few disciplines done daily that compound into lasting wealth. I'm about to reveal 8 powerful habits that separate the intentionally wealthy from the accidentally poor. These aren't just theoretical ideas, they're practical principles that work if you work them. If you adopt just one, you'll feel the shift. But if you adopt all 8, your entire financial future could be transformed. Hit subscribe and comment "Wealth Habits" along with your biggest financial goal. Let's build a community where we support each other's journey to prosperity. But that's just the obvious part. The first habit will shock you because most people do it completely backwards. Habit 1. Set clear financial goals. The first habit that separates the wealthy from everyone else is setting clear financial goals. Not vague hopes like, "I want to be rich someday," but specific, written, measurable targets that create focused action. Most people drift financially, hoping wealth will somehow find them. But hope isn't a strategy. Wealth responds to clear direction, not wishful thinking. But that's just the obvious part. The first habit will shock you because most people do it completely backwards. In the bustling harbor towns where fortunes were made and lost on the seas, there lived 2 equally skilled ship captains whose dramatically different approaches to navigation would reveal everything about the power of clarity versus confusion in achieving prosperity. Both captains possessed identical ships, experienced crews, and access to the same profitable trade routes, yet their methods of planning voyages would create completely different destinies. The first captain, known as the wandering navigator, would set sail with only a general sense of direction. He knew he wanted to reach somewhere profitable, and hoped favorable winds would guide him to success. When crew members asked about their specific destination, he would respond with vague answers: "We're heading toward riches," or "We'll find opportunities out there." This captain believed that flexibility was more important than rigid planning. The wandering navigator's voyages often resulted in confusion and wasted resources. His crew never knew exactly what they were working toward. Storms would blow them off course with no clear reference point for correction, and when opportunities arose at various ports, he couldn't quickly decide which aligned with his undefined objectives. His journeys were long, inefficient, and frequently unprofitable. The second captain, called the precision planner, took a completely different approach that initially seemed almost obsessive to outside observers. Before every voyage, he would spend hours creating detailed navigation charts with specific destinations, exact cargo requirements, and precise timeline expectations. He would write down 3 clear objectives for each journey and share them with his entire crew. When the precision planner encountered storms or unexpected challenges, his crew knew exactly how to adjust course because they understood the specific destination. When trade opportunities presented themselves at various ports, he could quickly evaluate whether they supported his defined objectives. His clarity created confidence among his crew and efficiency in his operations. Here's what that story reveals about financial success. When you know exactly what you're working toward, your efforts become focused, your decisions become sharper, and your progress becomes measurable. Clarity creates confidence, and confidence leads to focused action that builds lasting wealth. Here's where most people's wealth gets destroyed without them realizing it: through their immediate environment. Habit 2. Surround yourself with winners. The second habit that determines your financial destiny is surrounding yourself with winners. People who are growing, building, and thinking bigger than you currently are. Your environment shapes your behavior more than you realize, and whether you know it or not, you're always becoming like the people you spend the most time with. Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Here's where most people's wealth gets destroyed without them realizing it, through their immediate environment. In the ancient guild districts where master craftsmen passed down their skills through generations, there lived a talented young apprentice who faced a crucial decision that would determine not just his craft abilities, but his entire approach to prosperity and success. This apprentice had been accepted by 2 different masters, each offering completely different learning environments and philosophies about wealth building. The first master, known as the comfortable craftsman, ran a workshop filled with skilled but unmotivated workers who had settled into predictable routines. These craftsmen possessed adequate abilities and earned steady incomes, but their conversations revolved around complaints about difficult customers, rising material costs, and limited opportunities in their trade. They had developed a culture of accepting mediocrity as the natural state of their profession. When the apprentice worked alongside the comfortable craftsman's team, he found himself adopting their limiting beliefs about what was possible in their field. The workers would discourage ambitious ideas, mock innovative techniques as unnecessary complications, and reinforce the belief that modest success was the best anyone could hope for. Their environment was safe, predictable, and ultimately limiting. The second master, called the visionary builder, operated his workshop differently, surrounding himself with apprentices and journeymen who were hungry to grow, experiment, and push the boundaries of their craft. These craftsmen studied new techniques, shared innovative ideas, and constantly challenged each other to create work that exceeded previous standards. Their conversations focused on opportunities, growth strategies, and ways to serve customers better. When the apprentice spent time in the visionary builder's workshop, something powerful happened. The high standards and growth mindset of the environment naturally elevated his own thinking and performance. He began seeing possibilities he had never considered, developing skills he didn't know existed, and adopting the ambitious mindset that characterized everyone around him. Here's what that story reveals about wealth building. Environment always wins over intention. When you're around people who are growing, you grow too. Their habits rub off, their mindset challenges you, and their presence raises your standards naturally. Wait, the most important part is understanding this multiplication principle that creates true financial security. Habit 3. Build multiple streams of income. The third habit that creates true financial security is building multiple streams of income, creating options and diversification instead of relying on a single paycheck. Depending on one income source is like standing on one leg. It might hold you for a while, but eventually it wears out, and when it does, you fall. The wealthy don't rely on a single paycheck. They create systems that generate money from multiple sources simultaneously. Wait, the most important part is understanding this multiplication principle that creates true financial security. In the fertile valleys, where agricultural prosperity determined the survival of entire communities, there lived 2 equally skilled farmers whose completely different approaches to cultivation would reveal everything about the relationship between diversification and long-term security. Both farmers inherited identical plots of land with rich soil and favorable growing conditions, yet their planting strategies would create dramatically different outcomes during times of prosperity and hardship. The first farmer, known as the single harvest specialist, believed that mastery came through complete focus on perfecting one crop. He dedicated his entire farm to growing the finest wheat in the region, investing all his time, energy, and resources into becoming the absolute best wheat producer possible. During good years when wheat prices were high and weather conditions were perfect, the single harvest specialist enjoyed impressive profits and took pride in his specialized expertise. However, this concentration created a dangerous vulnerability. When wheat diseases struck the region, his entire income disappeared overnight. When market demand shifted toward other grains, he had no alternative products to offer. When weather patterns changed and became unsuitable for wheat production, his years of specialized knowledge became worthless, leaving him with no backup plan for survival. The second farmer, called the wise harvest diversifier, took a completely different approach that initially seemed less focused but proved far more resilient. Instead of concentrating on a single crop, he divided his land into sections dedicated to different types of produce: grains for stable income, fruits for higher value markets, vegetables for local demand, and even a small section for raising livestock that could provide both meat and dairy products. When diseases affected one crop, the wise harvest diversifier's other income sources continued flowing. When market prices fluctuated for specific products, he could focus more energy on the most profitable options while maintaining baseline income from other sources. During challenging weather years, some crops would struggle, while others would thrive, creating natural balance and protection against total loss. Here's what that story reveals about income building. Multiple streams provide stability, freedom, and protection that single income sources cannot match. When one stream faces challenges, others continue flowing, ensuring you're never devastated by circumstances beyond your control. This next habit separates the permanently wealthy from the temporarily lucky through the magic of time and patience. Habit 4. Invest consistently. The fourth habit that transforms savers into wealth builders is investing consistently, making your money work for you instead of just storing it safely. Saving protects what you have, but investing grows what you have. The wealthy understand that true wealth isn't built by earning money alone. It's built by making their money earn money for them through the power of compound returns over time. This next habit separates the permanently wealthy from the temporarily lucky through the magic of time and patience. In the mountainous regions where generations of families had worked the same land, there lived two land stewards whose dramatically different approaches to cultivation would reveal everything about the difference between immediate security and generational wealth building. Both stewards inherited modest plots and faced the choice of how to use their limited resources to provide for their families' futures. The first steward, known as the cautious grain keeper, believed that safety came through storing harvested grain in secure granaries. Every season, he would work diligently to grow enough crops to feed his family and carefully store any surplus in protected storage facilities. The cautious grain keeper took great pride in his growing stockpiles of preserved grain and felt secure knowing his family could survive many seasons without additional harvesting. However, the cautious grain keeper never realized that his stored grain was slowly losing value through natural deterioration and pest damage. His wealth remained static, providing security, but never growing beyond what his own labor could produce. When emergencies arose requiring large amounts of resources, he could only draw from his finite stored reserves. The second steward, called the patient orchard planner, made a decision that initially seemed risky and provided no immediate gratification. Instead of just storing surplus grain, he used his extra resources to plant fruit trees, nut groves, and other long-term crops that would require years to mature, but would eventually produce abundant harvests with minimal ongoing effort. During the early years, the patient orchard planner appeared to have less immediate security than the cautious grain keeper. His trees produced nothing while requiring care and protection. However, as decades passed, something extraordinary happened. His planted trees began producing fruit that far exceeded what he could grow through annual crops, and these trees continued producing for generations. Most importantly, the patient orchard planner's trees produced seeds that could be planted to create even more productive trees. creating exponential growth that compounded over time. His initial investment of resources had created a legacy of abundance that supported not just his own family, but future generations. Here's what that story reveals about investing. Consistent planting of financial seeds creates compound growth that eventually produces wealth far beyond what your labor alone could generate. Do you think you understand wealth building? This reveals the real magic that separates rich thinking from poor thinking. Habit 5. Read and learn daily. The fifth habit that creates lasting wealth is reading and learning daily. Investing in the most powerful asset you have, your mind. Your income will never grow past your personal development, and your financial life will never rise above your understanding of it. Jim Rohn said it best: formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. Do you think you understand wealth building? This reveals the real magic that separates rich thinking from poor thinking. In the ancient centers of learning, where knowledge determined power and prosperity across entire civilizations, there lived two equally intelligent scholars whose completely different approaches to wisdom acquisition would reveal everything about the relationship between continuous learning and lasting success. Both scholars had access to the same vast libraries and possessed identical intellectual capabilities, yet their learning philosophies would create dramatically different life outcomes. The first scholar, known as the graduation stopper, believed that formal education was sufficient for lifelong success. After completing his advanced studies and earning recognition for his academic achievements, he considered his learning journey complete. The graduation stopper would occasionally read for entertainment or review familiar subjects, but he never actively sought new knowledge that challenged his existing understanding or expanded his capabilities. The graduation stopper took pride in his established expertise and felt confident that his accumulated knowledge would carry him through any future challenges. However, as years passed and the world continued evolving around him, his static knowledge base gradually became outdated. New discoveries, innovative techniques, and changing circumstances created opportunities he couldn't recognize because his learning had stopped growing. The second scholar, called the eternal student, approached knowledge with a completely different philosophy that initially seemed almost insecure to outside observers. Despite his impressive achievements, the eternal student maintained profound humility about how much he didn't know and dedicated 30 minutes every day to learning something new that could improve his understanding or capabilities. The eternal student understood that yesterday's knowledge wouldn't solve tomorrow's problems, so he continuously fed his mind with books about money management, biographies of successful people, studies of market patterns, and insights from mentors who had achieved what he aspired to accomplish. This daily habit gradually rewired his thinking, helping him see patterns others missed and identify opportunities that remained invisible to static thinkers. Over time, the eternal student's continuous learning created a compounding effect where each new piece of knowledge connected with previous insights to generate innovative solutions and wealth-building strategies. His growing understanding opened doors to better decisions, superior investments, and collaborative relationships with other forward-thinking individuals. Here's what that story reveals about wealth psychology. Continuous learning creates continuous earning. When you feed your mind daily with quality input, you develop the thinking patterns that naturally lead to wealth-building decisions and opportunities. The following story explains why smart people make foolish money decisions that destroy their wealth. Habit 6. Live below your means. The sixth habit that separates true wealth from fake prosperity is living below your means. Understanding the difference between looking rich and being rich. This isn't about being cheap or depriving yourself. It's about shifting your mindset from spending to show off toward investing to build up. Many people go broke trying to appear wealthy, while those who are truly wealthy often live simply and well below their financial capabilities. The following story explains why smart people make foolish money decisions that destroy their wealth. In the prosperous trading centers where merchants competed not just for profits, but for social status and recognition, there lived two equally successful traders whose completely different approaches to wealth management would reveal everything about the relationship between lifestyle choices and lasting financial security. Both merchants earned substantial profits from their trading ventures, yet their spending philosophies would determine whether they built dynasties or lost everything. The first merchant, known as the Golden Display Master, believed that success should be visible and impressive to everyone around him. Whenever his business generated profits, he would immediately invest in spectacular displays of wealth. Ornate carriages, luxurious clothing made from exotic materials, elaborate feasts at the finest establishments, and a magnificent mansion filled with costly decorations that showcased his prosperity to the entire community. The Golden Display Master took great satisfaction in the admiration and respect his lifestyle generated. Other merchants and citizens would point to his possessions as evidence of his business success, and he enjoyed the social status that came from his impressive displays. However, the Golden Display Master never realized that his beautiful possessions were actually consuming his wealth rather than creating more of it, leaving him vulnerable during economic downturns. The second merchant, called the Silent Wealth Builder, made completely different choices that initially seemed almost stingy to outside observers. Instead of spending profits on impressive displays, he quietly invested in assets that would generate ongoing income, additional trading routes, partnerships with other successful merchants, real estate that could be rented for monthly income, and shares in profitable ventures across multiple industries. The Silent Wealth Builder lived modestly while his investments grew, understanding that temporary sacrifices in lifestyle would create permanent financial freedom. He drove a simple cart instead of an ornate carriage, wore quality but unremarkable clothing, and lived in a comfortable but unimpressive home while his wealth multiplied through strategic investments. Years later, when market downturns destroyed businesses throughout the region, the Silent Wealth Builder's diversified investments provided multiple income streams that sustained him through difficulties, while the Golden Display Master lost everything because his lifestyle had consumed the profits that should have been building his future. Here's what that story reveals about wealth building. Invest in appreciating assets rather than depreciating displays. True wealth creates options and freedom, not just impressive appearances. Here's where psychology meets mathematics in the most powerful way for wealth creation. Habit 7. Track every dollar. The seventh habit that creates financial awareness is tracking every dollar, knowing exactly where your money goes instead of wondering where it went. Most people don't have a money problem. They have an awareness problem. You can't manage what you don't measure, and money disappears when it isn't managed with intentional attention and conscious decision-making. Here's where psychology meets mathematics in the most powerful way for wealth creation. In the grand royal palaces, where vast treasuries determine the strength and prosperity of entire kingdoms, there lived two equally capable royal stewards whose dramatically different approaches to resource management would reveal everything about the relationship between financial awareness and lasting abundance. Both stewards were entrusted with managing identical amounts of royal wealth and faced the same responsibilities for maintaining the kingdom's prosperity. The first steward, known as the trusting spender, believed that good intentions were sufficient for proper resource management. He would authorize expenditures based on immediate needs and general impressions of the treasury's health, never maintaining detailed records of where specific amounts were being allocated. The trusting spender felt confident that his experience and judgment would naturally guide appropriate spending decisions. When questioned about specific expenses or budget allocations, the trusting spender would provide general estimates and vague explanations about necessary costs. He trusted that money was being spent wisely because the purposes seemed reasonable in the moment. However, the trusting spender never realized that countless small expenditures were slowly draining the treasury through unnoticed leaks that accumulated into significant losses over time. At the end of each month, the trusting spender would discover that more money had disappeared than he expected, leaving him confused about where the resources had gone and frustrated by his inability to maintain adequate reserves for the kingdom's future needs. The second steward, called the meticulous recorder, took a completely different approach that initially seemed almost obsessive to outside observers. He maintained detailed ledgers that documented every single expenditure, no matter how small, and required written justification for each allocation of royal resources before approving any spending. The meticulous recorder's daily practice involved reviewing all expenses, identifying patterns in resource usage, and analyzing which expenditures contributed to the kingdom's prosperity versus those that merely consumed wealth without creating value. This systematic awareness allowed him to spot financial leaks before they became significant problems and redirect resources toward investments that strengthened the kingdom's long-term security. Through his careful tracking, the meticulous recorder discovered numerous unnecessary expenses that had been draining the treasury: forgotten subscriptions to unnecessary services, duplicate payments for similar functions, and impulse purchases that provided no lasting benefit to the kingdom's operations. Here's what that story reveals about wealth management. Awareness is the first step to control. When you track every dollar, you gain power over your money instead of letting it disappear through unconscious spending habits. What happens next reveals the foundation that supports all other wealth-building habits. Habit 8. Pay yourself first. The eighth and foundational habit that supports all wealth building is paying yourself first, saving a portion of every dollar you earn before paying bills or spending on anything else. This isn't just about the money, it's about what it says to your mind. When you pay yourself first, you declare that your future matters, your goals matter, and you matter enough to prioritize your financial security. What happens next reveals the foundation that supports all other wealth-building habits. In the ancient kingdom where tax collection determined the government's ability to provide services, maintain infrastructure, and ensure long-term prosperity, there lived two royal tax ministers whose completely different approaches to revenue gathering would reveal everything about the relationship between systematic saving and financial security. Both ministers were responsible for collecting the same types of taxes from identical populations, yet their collection strategies would create dramatically different outcomes for the kingdom's treasury. The first minister, known as the hopeful collector, believed that citizens would naturally contribute appropriate amounts to the royal treasury after taking care of their personal needs and expenses. He would send tax notices requesting payments and hope that people would have sufficient funds remaining after their personal spending to contribute meaningfully to the kingdom's operations. The hopeful collector trusted that citizens understood the importance of supporting government services and would voluntarily prioritize tax payments once they had satisfied their immediate wants and needs. However, this approach consistently resulted in disappointing collections because people would spend their money on personal desires and find little remaining for tax obligations, leaving the kingdom's treasury chronically underfunded. When emergencies arose or important infrastructure projects needed funding, the hopeful collector would discover that the treasury lacked adequate resources because citizens had consumed their income on personal expenses before contributing to collective needs. The second minister, called the strategic priority collector, implemented a completely different system that initially seemed harsh but proved far more effective for ensuring the kingdom's long-term prosperity. Instead of hoping citizens would have money left over, he established automatic collection systems that secured the kingdom's portion of citizen income before people could spend it on personal expenses. The strategic priority collector understood that human nature leads people to spend whatever money they can access, so he created systems that automatically directed appropriate amounts to the royal treasury first, then allowed citizens to manage their remaining income for personal needs. This approach ensured consistent funding for essential government services, while still providing citizens with adequate resources for their personal lives. Here's what that story reveals about personal wealth building. Pay yourself first by automatically saving before spending, because what gets prioritized gets protected. Your future financial security requires the same systematic approach that sustains kingdoms and builds lasting prosperity. The moment you decide to adopt these habits is the moment everything begins to change in your financial life. There you have it, the 8 habits that separate intentional wealth from accidental poverty. Setting clear financial goals that create focused action, surrounding yourself with winners who elevate your standards, building multiple income streams for security and freedom, investing consistently to harness compound growth, reading and learning daily to expand your earning capacity, living below your means to build real assets, tracking every dollar to gain financial control, and paying yourself first to prioritize your future. Here's the powerful truth. Wealth isn't accidental, it's intentional. As Jim Rohn said, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. These aren't complex strategies or secret formulas. They're deliberate choices repeated over time that compound into lasting prosperity. Your challenge starting today: choose one habit and implement it immediately. Maybe it's setting 3 specific financial goals, tracking your spending for 30 days, or automatically saving before spending. Which habit will you start with and why? Comment below. Your commitment might inspire someone else to begin their wealth-building journey. If this completely changed how you see financial success, hit subscribe and share it with someone ready to stop drifting and start building. Remember, wealth doesn't care where you started. It only cares where you're headed.